I was wearier than I'd been for years and years. I had 365 miles yet to hitchhike to New York and a dime in my pocket. I walked 5 miles to get out of Pittsburgh, and 2 rides, an apple truck and a big trailer truck took me to Harrisburg in the soft Indian summer, rainy night. I cut right along. I wanted to get home. It was the night of the ghost of the Susquehanna. I never dreamed I'd get so hung up. In the first place, I didn't know it, but I was walking back to Pittsburgh on an older highway. Neither did the ghost. The ghost was shriveled. A little old man with a paper satchel claimed he was headed for Canada. He walked very fast, commanding me to follow, and said there was a bridge up ahead we could cross. He was about 60 years old, talked incessantly of the meals he had, how much butter they gave him for pancakes, how many extra slices of bread, how the old man had called him from a porch of a charity home in Maryland and invited him to stay for the weekend, how he took a nice warm bath before he left, how he found a brand new hat by the side of the road in Virginia and that was it on his head, how he hit every Red Cross in town and showed them his veteran World War I credentials, how they treated him, how the Harrisburg Red Cross was not worthy of the name, how he managed in this hard world and sometimes sold neckties, but as far as I could see, he was just a semi-respectable walking hobo of some kind who covered the entire eastern wilderness on foot, hitting Red Cross offices and sometimes bumming on Main Street corners for a dime. We were bums together. We walked 7 miles along the mournful Susquehanna. It's a terrifying river. It has bushy cliffs on both sides that lean like hairy ghosts over the unknown waters. Inky night covers all. Sometimes from the rail yards across the river rises a great red locomotive flare that illuminates the horrid cliffs. It was drizzling too. The little man said he had a fine belt in his satchel, and we stopped for him to fish it out. I got me a fine belt here somewheres. Got it in Frederick, Maryland. Damn. Did I leave that thing on the corner at Fredericksburg? You mean Frederick? No. Fredericksburg, Virginia. He was always talking about Frederick, Maryland and Fredericksburg, Virginia, and he walked right in the road in the teeth of the advancing traffic and almost got hit several times. I plodded along in the ditch. Any minute I expected the poor little madman to go flying in the night dead. We never found that bridge. I left him at the railroad underpass, and in the dark, because I was so sweaty from the hike, I changed shirts and I put on 2 sweaters. A roadhouse illuminated my sad endeavors. A whole family came walking down the dark road and wondered what I was doing. Strangest thing of all, a tenorman was blowing very fine blues in this Pennsylvania hick house. I listened and moaned. It began to rain harder. A man gave me a ride back to Harrisburg and told me I was on the wrong road. I suddenly saw the little man standing under a street lamp with his thumb stuck out. Poor forlorn man, poor lost sometimes boy, now broken ghost of the penniless wilds. I told my driver the story and he stopped to tell the old man, "Now look here, fella, you're on your way west, not east." "Eh?" said the little ghost. "Can't tell me I don't know my way around here. Been walking this country for years. I'm headed for Kennedy." "But this road ain't to Canada. This road to Pittsburgh, and it goes to Chicago." The little man got disgusted with us and he walked off. And the last I saw of him was his bobbing little white bag dissolving in the darkness of the mournful Alleghenies. "Hey," I yelled. He was muttering to himself. He had no use for quitters like me. "I'm going right straight into her," he said about Canada. He said he knew a place on the border where he could slip in unnoticed, and he was going to hop a freight ride up there. Lehigh Valley, Lackawanna, Erie, I ride 'em all. I thought all the wilderness of America was in the west till the ghost of the Susquehanna showed me different. No, there's a wilderness in the east. It's the same wilderness Ben Franklin plotted in the ox cart days when he was a postmaster, and when George Washington was a wild buck Indian fighter, when Daniel Boone told stories by Pennsylvania lamps and promised to fight and find the gap. When Bradford built his road and men whooped her up in log cabins, there were no great Arizona spaces for the little man, just a bushy wilderness of eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. The backgrounds, the Black Star roads that curve among the mournful rivers like Susquehanna, Monongahela, and Old Potomac. This experience thoroughly shattered me. That night in Harrisburg bore me the punishment of the damned, and ever since, I had to sleep in the railroad station on a bench. At dawn, the ticket masters threw me out. Isn't it true that you start your life a sweet child believing in everything under his father's roof, and then comes the day of the Laodiceans when you know you're wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked and with the visage of a gruesome, grieving ghost, you go shuddering through nightmare life. I stumbled haggardly out of the station. I had no more control. All I could see of the morning was a whiteness, like the whiteness of the tomb. I was starving to death. All I had left in the form of calories were the last of the cough drops I bought in Preston, Nebraska months ago. These I sucked for their sugar. I didn't know how to panhandle. I stumbled out of town with barely enough strength to reach the city limits. I knew I'd be arrested if I spent another night in Harrisburg. Cursed city. Bad morning. Where were the mornings of my boyhood vision? What's a man going to do? Life is one irony after another, because the ride I then proceeded to get was the ride of a skinny, haggard man who believed in controlled starvation for the sake of health. When I told him I was starving to death as we rolled east, he said, "Fine, fine, there's nothing better for you. I myself haven't eaten for 3 days. I'm going to live to be 150 years old." He was a ghost. A bag of bones, a floppy doll, a broken stick, a maniac. I could have gotten a ride with an affluent fat man who'd say, "Let's stop at this restaurant and have some pork chops and beans." No, I had to get a ride that morning with a maniac who believed in controlled starvation for the sake of health. Somewhere in New Jersey, he grew lenient and took out bread and butter and sandwiches from the back of the car. They were hidden among his salesman samples. He was selling plumbing fixtures around Pennsylvania. I devoured the bread and the butter. Suddenly, I began to laugh. I was all alone in the car waiting for him as he made business calls in Allentown, New Jersey, and I laughed and I laughed. God, I was stuck. Tired of life. But the madman drove me home to New York. Suddenly, I found myself on Times Square.